Good day, Cochrane. Welcome to another edition of Fireside Chat, coming to you from the fireside today, just here in the Ranch House in the Hall of Vision. Pretty thick agenda last night, so let's get right to it, shall we? We had a public hearing. We talked about redesignation in Heritage Hills. I talked about this, I believe, last week. It is the ranch, I'm calling it, the big vacant parcel in the middle of, the north end of Heritage Hills, the 20 acres. So we had a staff presentation, a presentation from the applicant, the developer, and so council listened to everything that was said about that, and we will be voting on that at an upcoming meeting. Then we had what's called our organizational meeting. It's a special meeting of council where we appoint the deputy mayor. You can hear some kids in the background maybe. We got daycare up at the ranch house, so it's all good. Community building, so we'll just keep on rolling through. The organizational meeting is where we set the deputy mayor positions for the next year. So I think we're going through Councillor Fedayko, Councillor Flowers, then Councillor McFadden in that order for 4-month terms each, starting today. So Councillor Fedayko is deputy mayor, and will step in for me when need be on community events, and if I'm out of the country or away from the desk to sign and do those mayoral duties. So we did that, and we also appointed councillors and myself to our committee meetings or the committees, sorry, that we sit on, like the Planning Commission, Subdivision and Appeal Board, the random committees like that. So there'll be a full listing available on the website if you are interested in who is serving on what. Moving into the main agenda, like I say, it was fairly thick, so we had quite a few things to deal with last night. First one was delegation. So we had 2 delegations. First one was the Cochrane and Area Humane Society. We heard from Janine and Carla. They obviously are a beneficiary of town funding through our budget process. So we hear from quite a few groups that receive funding from the town, and this is one of them. Actually, both delegations last night were in regards to budget requests. So we heard from the Humane Society and all the great work that they do for our pets and for, everything that they do. So it's a great organization. If you have a chance, you should go down and check them out. I happen to get my dog from there. He's turning 2 in 2 weeks, so there may be a small party at the Janung household for Bentley. He was the star of my last Hillside Chat, if you recall. Anyways, I digress. So let's talk about the Cochrane Public Library. They were the second delegation. They again are asking for, they're a recipient of funding through the town. Library is a great organization. They have 8,000 square feet and looking to expand in the future. But that is a few years off, so we were talking about how they are going to bridge that gap and what they do with the money from the town. So those were the 2 delegations last night. Moving on, we then started talking about Fireside. Fireside community, there was a parcel in the Phase 10 of Fireside that the developer was looking to amend the neighborhood plan and land use bylaw to allow for a daycare facility to be located on a certain parcel of land in Phase 10. So to enable that, council had to adjust the neighborhood plan, which then also affected the open space. So the open space, if you're a Fireside resident, you may have bought into that community with the hopes of there being a fire pit, a community fire pit in the open park space. The amendment was asking to change that to community gardens or some other amenity. Council turned that down last last night. They looked at that as a change. If you were buying into a community, council felt that you should be able to have some firm knowledge that the fact that that is not changing. You may have purchased your lot next to that open space or close to that open space because of the fire pit, so we decided to keep that amenity the same, but we allowed for the change in the land use that would allow that daycare facility or something like that to be located in the heart of the community. So that is the Reader's Digest version of those two items on the agenda, the neighborhood plan amendment and the land use bylaw amendment. So short story, council is keeping the fire pit amenity in the open space as was presented previously, and then the land use was amended so that the live-work units are changing to an R2 style of home. So as a lay person walking by, I don't think you would notice a difference from the outside, but just the inside use will be different. So that is that. Moving on to, we had a first reading and set a public hearing for our next meeting on the Sunset Ridge annexed land. You may have recalled that through our annexation process over the past year, we negotiated with Rocky View County to get the quarter section north of Heritage Hills on Horse Creek Road and the 40 acres north of Sunset Ridge. This 40 acres north on Sunset Ridge needs to be brought into the town land use. This is what this bylaw is going to do. You also may recall that we needed to annex that land so that we could have the second access into Sunset Ridge be allowed at the northern tip of that, not at the current town bound or the former town boundary on 1A, or sorry, 22. So this is the process to bring this into the town land use bylaw. Next, this is another one of those technical ones. We have a bylaw that we are looking to close a road allowance on the southern tip of the edge of the boundary of South Bow. So south of Cochrane, right on the edge of our boundary, in South Bow Landing, there is a road allowance that the province has jurisdiction over. When a community wishes to deem a road allowance not required for roadways, we can apply to the province to have it closed and turned into something else. So this road closure will allow the developer to move. If you go south there now, you can see the massive power line that kind of cuts diagonally across the South Bow lands. The developer, as part of that subdivision, would like to move the power line to the southernmost boundary and create a park there, an open space, a pathway, and I believe a bit of an off-leash area, dog walking area. For us to be able to do that, we need to close the road, so we had first reading of that last night and set the public hearing for next meeting. If you have any input on any of those, you can send the planning staff an email or council, or attend the public hearing and voice your concerns, or maybe you wish to share your positive views on that too. So that was that. Next massive thing on the agenda, it seemed like everything was big last night, was the Spray Lake Sawmill Family Sports Center Reserve development. A couple of meetings ago, we had a delegation from the board that operates the rec center on behalf of the town. Many in the community don't realize that the town and the Rocky View County own that facility jointly, and we have an arm's length board, a public at large volunteer board that operates that facility for us on our behalf. They allow us to operate that at a more of a cost recovery model versus if the municipality operated the facility, the costs to do so would be much greater. So we get quite a good deal from that board operating that facility. That being said, the board came came forward a couple of meetings ago asking for a reserve fund, basically a loan, to allow them to bridge through some of the growing pains, if you will. Because of the new pool being added there a couple of years ago, they have had to make some very large adjustments. If you can imagine going from, I believe, 60 to 80 staff to almost 240 staff, operating a pool facility, bringing in all of the pool staff, and curling rink. So they are feeling some crunch there. They're adapting. They have a plan. They have a marketing plan. They are executing that plan, but they asked council for a loan to bridge some of this growing that they're doing. So council deliberated on that for quite some time last night. They were asking for $1 million. Administration came back with a very clear, transparent plan where the board would have to apply for monies from this reserve and have a real set criteria of what they could ask for and when, or not when, but it needs to fit the criteria so that there's some, just some process around it, and then administration would give council an update annually on what money was left in the fund and or what money has been replaced or repaid. So the board, in their wisdom, is actually not asking for a handout. They're asking for a loan that they would like to have the ability to repay. So there's a lot of guidelines around that. They were asking for $1 million. It seems like a lot. There was a 10-year span put on the amount so that they would repay that and have it repaid within the 10-year span. It was coming from a reserve that the town has. We have an operating reserve for such requests and not affecting taxes at all. So the board was asking for $1 million. It allows them to be nimble, to adjust to the growth that I had talked about. Council talked about that for quite some time and reduced the amount to $500,000. So that was the outcome of the decision last night. $500,000 for a reserve to be accessed through the board that would make representation to administration and then representation back to council on an annual basis. So that was decided last night. Moving on, we talked about off-leash criteria in developing neighborhoods. So you may recall a few months ago we put in place the off-leash criteria for existing neighborhoods. So that means if there was a dog park to go in an existing neighborhood, it must meet these criteria. So if you've been in the community for a few years, you can understand some of the sensitivity of going into an existing neighborhood and saying, okay, we're going to put an off-leash park here. Well, you can imagine the backlash we get from some residents about maybe not wanting that in their backyard. That's not what they bought into that neighborhood for. So we set a clear set of guidelines a few months ago on that process. This criteria is about the what the requirements would be for developers if they want to put them in newer communities. So people would, there may be residents that would like to buy into a community that have a dog park planned in them, and this is the list that the developers would have to go through to ensure that they're following the guidelines that the town would like to see. So that was passed. Things like fencing and how far away from a roadway or how much space, what's the minimum requirements, that type of thing. Next, we talked about backup beeper regulations. So there was a delegation to council, I want to say a few months ago, that asked for council to consider banning backup alarms in our community. Now that may sound drastic. I think we all realize the beep, beep, beep of a backup alarm. This group was proposing that not to take away backup alarms altogether, but to replace replace them with a ambient noise backup alarm. So if you pay attention to any town vehicle, we have gone ahead and replaced all of our own vehicles, our own fleet, with this ambient backup alarm. It sounds like a duck quacking when you back up, and it's proven safe. They've been used around the world in other communities and other jurisdictions, Germany, the UK, they're all over the place. So, but the difference is this ambient one does not travel through the space, and obviously our community is in a bit of a bubble in the valley here, and backup alarm sounds seem to travel up the hillside and disrupt a lot of people. So in the efforts of getting ahead of this sound pollution, noise pollution, this group asked Council to take a look at this. So Councillor Flowers brought this forward. We had a report from administration last night on how to address this. So basically what we've decided to do is send administration back again to look at, we found that this is going to be super hard to enforce. Obviously we're going to have delivery vehicles or contractors coming from Calgary, outside of Cochrane, that may have not even heard about our ability to change a backup alarm. So someone delivering a load of topsoil or a load of sod and they back up and they have the old traditional backup beeper, it's going to be hard for us to enforce as a community. So but what we can do is put in our request for proposals when we are building or having large construction that is led by the town, we can put that in our RFP. So for example, when we are building the bridge, we could have in our documents when we ask for contractors to apply to get the contract, they must have one of these style of backup alarms on their heavy equipment so that we can control the noise pollution on our own projects. So that is one way we can do it. The other is town businesses. So businesses that have town business license maybe would have to have this as a requirement. This is not an attempt to add another layer of red tape. This is trying to be proactive to get ahead of the sound and the issues of noise pollution. So the group that did bring this forward, I commend them for their forward thinking and their initiative. They formed a group in the east end of Cochrane a couple of years back that looked at businesses in the industrial side of the tracks that were using these forklifts all the time, backing up, and the beeper sounds would go up the valley into the east end and disrupt a lot of people. So all of those groups, all of those businesses, Allspan, Spray Lake Sawmill, the town ourselves have changed the backup beepers to these ambient ones and have really solved that problem. So we're looking at spreading that out and keeping that cause alive. So that is the outcome of that. Next, we talked about Fortis Alberta Electric Distribution System franchise fees. We've received a little bit of pushback on this franchise fee initiative, but I would just like to talk about it for a moment. So Council did agree to increase our franchise fees to, I believe it was 2% or 1% higher. This generates a $301,000 revenue for the community, and I just would like to talk about what that fee is. The Fortis and ATCO Gas both have franchise fees that they charge to every single user in the community. So it's not just residents, it's businesses. Anyone that uses gas and anyone that uses power pays a franchise fee. So they have right-of-ways within our community where they dig up our streets, they put in their lines and they distribute their utilities to Cochrane users. The important thing to note here is that the franchise fee is something we charge Fortis, we charge ATCO for the use of our lands in the distribution of their utilities. So we as a community incur costs to repair roads, maintain the right-of-ways that these utilities use. And a way that we can pay for this upgrade and repair is through franchise fees. So yes, it's a user fee that is tacked on to your gas or power bill. So residents end up paying, but also it's a way of spreading the cost to every single user. So it's not just residents, it's also businesses. And that's important note. So this, we did have some feedback that this was a hidden tax to offset the cost of transit. That is simply not true. The only thing that we can use this fee for is in the transportation budget. It is for snow removal, it is for roads, it is for repairs, and it is only used in that department. So that is the intent of that. Other communities charge, every single community charges franchise fees. So it's an open, transparent way, but it's, and people would say it's a tax grab. I see it as a way of recapturing fees to offset the cost of all the things I just mentioned. So council voted unanimously to approve that last night, which is a good segue into the budget. So we received last night the draft 2020-22 budget, pretty comprehensive document. Council will be looking at the budget in depth over the next month or so. I'm just going to flip to that. I think it's on the last page. Here we go. So it's available now online today. If you want to go and take a look at it, it is at cochrane.ca/budget. You can give feedback there. We're going to have a couple of, and I'm just reading here, we're going to have a couple of pop-up locations for Saturday, November 2nd, 12 to 4 p.m. and Tuesday, November 5th, 4 to 8 p.m. at Spray Lake Sawmills Family Sports Center. Come down and see representatives from council and administration that you can share your views on the draft budget or give us input on what you think should be different in the budget. I've been taking a lot of comments and questions about what has the provincial budget done or how has it impacted Cochrane. The draft budget was prepared, had to be prepared over the last few months with some assumptions what the province was going to do. This is the first time, at least that I can remember, I think maybe ever, that the provincial budget has been so late. Usually we get the budget in the spring and we can adapt our budget to meet what funding they're passing along or not passing along, so we can basically be poised and ready for that. This budget had to make some assumptions of what the province was going to say. It's too early to say exactly what those impacts are. I have come out and said a few comments in regards to what I thought the province was going to do. I'm a little bit optimistic, well, I'm relieved, I guess is a better word to say, that the cuts that the UCP made to funding were not as severe as I thought they may be, but that's not to say they're not going to have impacts on us as residents, and that will be looked at in way finer detail over the next few weeks. So if you have anything to say about the budget in its draft form, this is, the way I look at it is this is the staff's budget right now. We will go back and forth with council, deliberate this, and come out with a council budget at the, hopefully on December 9th. I think that's the date, where council will pass or endorse a budget for the community for 2020. So that is basically what we talked about for a long time last night at council. So at any time you want to reach out to me, give me a call, message me on Facebook. I've got quite a few messages today already. I don't know what it is about Tuesday mornings, but got a few messages already. email, jeff.janung@cochrane.ca. Happy to hear from anyone at any time. I can't promise I'll get back to you instantaneously, but I will do my best. I do reply to every email and every phone call in some form, so please reach out. I'm always happy to connect, talk about issues, inform people, and just get the facts out into the community. So that was that. Thanks for joining another long version of Fireside Chat. Over and out from the Ranchos.